I am Brad Keelor. He is Ed Idriss. Next up on the very special 150th episode of Director's Cut, find out what profession he would have engaged himself in 500 years ago. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, I sit down with a different GI member who has all manner of stories to tell. Some of them are personal, some are professional, and all of them are fun. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, after you are done watching this here interview today, you should head over to geoinstitute.org. And there you will find out that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And if you like what you see today, and I feel very strongly that you will, you should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will, of course, let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. I rushed through that a little bit today because we have a lot of excitement. This is, as you may have ascertained, episode number 150 of Director's Cut. I have been mostly in this chair 150 times to interview 150 different Geo-Institute members. And as it is a special occasion, joining us from his home in New Mexico, Professor Emeritus from the University of California, Davis, it is Ed Idriss. Ed, welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm very delighted to be here. I've watched quite a few of these, and it's fun to do it.
It's going to make you a pro, so you know the drill. We've got 10 questions. One of them was submitted by a viewer, a very lucky viewer who's going to win a prize this week. But two of the questions are the same that we ask everybody, and we start with one of those. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
Well, that's maybe too easy. I don't have a job. I retired from teaching in 2004, and all my professional career has involved three things: consulting, research, and teaching. And the order depended on who was my employer. Right now, my employer is me. Therefore, it's research and consulting. No, I do a little bit of teaching. I did that 10 years or so after I left the university, but don't do much of that anymore. Actually, I'm going to Australia in a couple weeks to talk for about 18 hours during that week. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway,
you will earn all the meals that are given to you that week, it sounds like.
I've been promised some fantastic meals, so I expect to enjoy that part.
So I do want to ask you a little bit of a follow-up here. We talked about this in your Geo Legends episode, but I want to ask you a specific question about it. Throughout your career, you went back and forth between academia and practice a couple of times. What was the most challenging part about doing that? Because usually people make the move once and that's it.
Well, I started out in private practice right after graduating from RPI with a bachelor's degree. Then I decided to continue, and then while I was studying, I was still working at Dames & Moore during my the first 2.5 years I was at the University of California at Berkeley. And then I joined the staff at UC Berkeley, then Woodward Clyde, and during the first 5 years, I was with Woodward Clyde. Actually, it was sort of a combined assignment. I worked part-time at Woodward Clyde and part-time at the university, and then all in private practice. And then in 1989, I sort of threw my hat into the. They asked me to come, so I said yes. Why not? I'll do it. And It's been fun all along, really terrific. I've really enjoyed it.
Perfect. We have all kinds, maybe people watch Director's Cut for the serious questions, but maybe they also watch it for the fun ones. I like to think it's for the fun ones. We're going to hit you with one of those now. What household appliance can you absolutely not live without?
Well, first of all, I'm a lousy cook, so I don't cook anything. I'm a good consumer of cooking, and my wife is a fantastic cook, so I really enjoy that part. But the one appliance that I always use every day I'm at home is the espresso machine. And if that ever has any problems, I immediately order a new one.
So what's your
I can't live without that one.
What's your standard cup then? Are you just a standard espresso guy? Do you make Americanos? Do you like lattes? What do you go for?
You see it? This is the size. And it fills about a double espresso. And I have one right after breakfast and one right after lunch. And I enjoy each tremendously. It's empty, unfortunately, now.
Now, that's a healthy amount. Any time in my life that I've had access to an espresso machine, it was bad news. I was more like a 12 cup a day kind of guy. And that got to be too much. I had a lot of migraines. I had to cut back. And so now you'll see me only with decaf. But man, do I still love an espresso when I have the opportunity. So two a day, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
So question number 3 is always the research question in the interview. And I said, because you're a geo legend, Ed, you get a lot more leeway than everybody else with this question. All I'm going to say is, what topic would you like to talk about? And let you have the floor.
Well, actually, I've been in practice in geotechnical engineering since 1958. And concentrating on geotechnical earthquake engineering since the early 70s. And that consists of worrying about earthquake ground motions, worrying about site characterization, worrying about site response, worrying about the response of embankments on rigid or on flexible foundations, soil structure interaction, all these issues that are involved. So any of those topics you want to ask about, I'm more than happy to address.
Well, I do have one question that I always like to ask whenever I get anybody who's an earthquake specialist. What event throughout your career, and was there an event that made you sit back and just say, everything I know is wrong, because this was so different, so challenging, any aspect of it that just made you rethink everything you had learned about that field?
I hadn't thought about that way, because occasionally you know that what you're doing is not complete because you don't have all the information, or you don't have all the capability, or you don't have all the understanding, or you don't have the tools, whatever the situation may be. But to say you're completely wrong, I don't think we've ever observed anything like that. Occasionally you design a pile system, and you go in and do the pile test, and things didn't work quite right the way you expected them to. They make modifications. That's not unexpected. I worked on one project one time where we thought we were going to put the building on a mat. I was working with Bill Moore at that time when I was at James & Moore back in the early 60s. And then as we were drilling, I had been really trained very well at Moran, Proctor, Muser, and Rutledge in the summer of 1958, where you carry a number 200 sieve and you always watch what's coming out of the ground. You don't leave the drill rig while it's advancing. You stand on top of it. And suddenly there was some organic material coming out from a certain corner. So we stopped the drilling. Let's take some samples. Found out there was one part that was still part of the And in San Francisco, you get these peats.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to change the design from a mat to a foundation. So those are the kind of things happen all the time. But to feel that you are so absolutely wrong, I don't think I've ever encountered that. At least not consciously.
That's a great answer, though.
Yeah.
We're going to get a little more about your career and about, well, I don't want to say job experience because everything is job experience, but we're going to talk about some specific areas of that as we get through the rest of the interview. The question that we teased at the beginning, you wondered if I meant 50 or 500 when I typed this one out. I meant 500. Ed, if you were born 500 years earlier than you were, what career would you have wanted?
You think I'm that old? But if I look back at where things were 500 years ago, that puts it around the time, maybe, I'm not sure whether Newton was around yet, but certainly Galileo, I think, was around. And maybe Leonardo da Vinci. And I know I'm not an artist. I never will be an artist. Therefore, I could never go in that direction. But when you look at Galileo, actually, I would have loved to have been his apprentice or his assistant or carry his suitcase, the briefcase, as the saying goes. Because when you look at what he had done, my gosh, he was a scientist, he was a mathematician, he was a physicist, he was an engineer, and you could learn so much from that. And probably he started the first observational method. He built a telescope, started observing the stars. So maybe that was the start of the observational method, which is so important in our practice. I think that's what I would have liked to do if I were born. And maybe I was born in Italy as well. I mean, if I was born in Timbuktu, I don't know what I would have done.
Well, I mean, this is your answer. You can be born wherever you want. That's the beauty of Director's Cut, right?
Well, he was born in Pisa, and that's a lovely area. I've been there many times, and
when I was thinking about this question, when I wrote it, I thought more or less along the same lines you did. And then I also had kind of a contrary opinion where, we're very fortunate to be alive in this time where we can do work that sometimes is really experimental and out there. And we don't have people lined up outside our house or our lab trying to kill us for doing that work. And 500 years ago, that was a real risk. If you were somebody like Galileo or Copernicus, there were huge numbers of people who were almost morally opposed to what you were doing. So they made these huge advances, but it's kind of amazing that they did it with the risks that they had to take day to day.
Well, he was very innovative, apparently. And also, he ended up in prison because he had suggested that the Earth rotated around itself and then around the sun. that was contrary to some other people's opinions.
Which that's exactly what I'm talking about. I could not imagine. I guess it could happen today. I never want to say it could never happen again, but wow, I'm pretty happy it's 2023 when we start talking about things like that.
When I was in graduate school, Mike Duncan was one of my classmates, and we became very good friends and over the years. And I remember him one time saying, discussing things about when you develop something and you tell people about it, they say, well, it just doesn't work. And then after a while, they say, well, we can understand, but maybe it works sometimes, maybe it doesn't work sometimes. And then eventually they say, we know it works, and we knew that all along. So that's what happened to poor Galileo. I think initially they were absolutely wrong. Now we know that he was right.
Just happened a little too late for him to enjoy the benefits of it, I guess. I wanted to make sure to get a question in here too about some of the fundraising and, well, not fundraising, about the the funds that you and your wife have started up for students at UC Davis, the Excellence Award and the Endowed Fund. What has been the most surprising impact or effect of both of those for you?
Well, the first one I did was just as I was thinking about retiring. I said, well, maybe I should establish some kind of an award because we had such bright young students, and I just wanted to acknowledge at least one of them. Nowadays, they've been typically actually selecting 2 a year, but to acknowledge that they are at that time one tiny bit ahead of the others, just to acknowledge that. And so I started this award, called it Excellence in Geotechnical Engineering. And I also talked to some of the older faculty member in the other groups, hoping that one or two of them might bite and also establish the same thing so we could have an award day every year. But it didn't work. So there's only one award, Excellence in Geotechnical Engineering. That's been really very satisfying. I almost was there every time the announcement was made, because after I left, those very bright professors started the group called the Graduate Student Society, something like that, GSS. Anyway, and they have a day every year. It's usually on Friday, and they call it round table, and they invite people from the outside, and the students present what they've been doing. And I've been attending almost each and every one. I think I missed one, and of course we had a couple where we did it virtually during the lockdown, as you may recall.
Yeah.
And the recipients are announced, and I go and shake their hand and congratulate them on that. And it's so exciting to see how they look so delighted in having received that. That was really exciting. The other award that we established was the one to support the students, to support the graduate student program. And that support is through 2 ways. One is to provide funding so they can attend as many as we can every year, send them to conferences like Geo-Congress. And in Philadelphia, there are about 20, and last year in Los Angeles, there are about 15 or 20, I forget the exact number. So it's somewhere between 15 and 25 every year they go to that. And that's really very exciting to see that. I want to encourage that so that they get to know what's going on in the profession. They get to see the presentations by others, and many of them are actually presenting at that conference as well, so that we have a very active group. And the professors that stayed on and were added after I left have really, really done a marvelous job at the University of California at Davis. They have a fantastically good program. Ross Boulanger, Dason Jiang, Katerina, Katerina, of course, and Diotopolo, and Alejandro, and of course Bruce had been there for a while. I think he's finally retired, and he retired a few years ago. And Boris and Yanis comes in half a year, half the time. So lots going on there. And then so it's very exciting times. So that's really been very, very encouraging. The other thing they do with that endowment is this: occasionally we'll bring a famous professor to come and talk about a specific topic. The last time I heard, they had Ray D. Cox come and talk about geophysical measurements. So that's very exciting. So the students get that extra dimension to them. So that's the whole purpose of that. And what's amazing is Ross is very good at organizing these things, Ross Boulanger. And he put a day on to a special day, and we invited some speakers, and so many companies actually supported the activity and donated anywhere from $1,000 to $15,000 each. And I was amazed, and some of them I had never even worked with any of them. And yet they supported the activity, and was very, very, very encouraging. I put up some money initially, my wife and I did, but they augmented it by more than a couple 100%. So it's very encouraging to see that. And since then, it's grown quite a bit. So it's a very, very good program that I hope will continue to grow.
I think for the Excellence Award specifically, when I was an undergrad, at the end of my sophomore year, we had a dinner where we met the people who donated the money for our scholarships. And I was an okay student, but I was not a great student by any stretch. I remember meeting these people and thinking to myself, wow, I don't have any idea who these people are. And yet they donated money so that I could go to school here. And that really made a big impact on me. I worked a lot harder, I feel like, after that. So you being there to meet the students who get this award, it's got to be really amazing for them as well.
I find that very enjoyable, and I go every year. They'll be coming up this coming thing in April this year.
Oh, that is fantastic.
So what's really good about that too is that they present what they've been working on.
Yeah.
So it's the students. It's not a faculty day. It's a students' day.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
The other question we ask everybody when they come on Director's Cut is a simple one, but some great stories sometimes. How did you first get involved in ASCE and then GI?
Well, while I was an undergraduate student at RPI, actually, they encouraged us to become student members. I think I did that in my junior year, because by then you are really going to go into civil engineering. Yeah. Before that, they were not so sure. Freshman and sophomore year, you're still not quite for sure that you're definitely going to be in the civil engineering program. But in the junior year, we typically join, and I remember joining as a student member. And as soon as I finished, graduated with a bachelor's degree, it's changed to there used to be, I'm not sure there's still junior members or not, but I was a junior member for a while, and I just continued. And then when I went back to RPI in 1961, 62, and Professor Robert Schiffman, who was heading that graduate program at that time, that's why I went there for that 1 year, he really encouraged us to go, and he actually paid for us to go. The conference was in New York City, and he paid for all. There were about 5 or 6 of us, these graduate students, and we all went to attend the conference. So it's been, then in the 60s, I started really being active in the soil mechanics and foundation engineering group. Became a member of the publications committee for a while, and other committees, and I was really involved in conferences, and then put on the conference for 1978, that year, the one that's held every 10 years. I'm hoping I can still go to the 2028, but I was at the, except for one, I was at each one, including the last one in where's the last one? In Austin.
Right.
Yeah, in Austin, and I still don't know where the next one is going to be, but I'm hoping to be still around to attend that one. So I got, and then of course, GI, and and I rejoined the publications committees in the 90s again. I think Mike Duncan was the chairman. He called me up, said, "How would you like to be a member?" So, yeah, sure, well, I'll work with you.
Just a phone call away. And I can vouch for your involvement in ASCE conferences way back. We have a great photo of you that we've put up on social media a couple times from the 125th anniversary conference in 1977. It's fantastic. And it looks like it's 1977. We'll just say that, but it's a great photo and I love it. Yeah. So we mentioned at the beginning that you're at your home in Santa Fe. Santa Fe, an absolutely beautiful part of this country. we had to ask, what's something unique about Santa Fe that people may not know?
Everything. Well, if they know, of course, they may not know is not doesn't answer the question quite correctly, but it's a very unique place in many ways, actually. And a lot of people come here. I think the population doubles during the season, so to speak, and because so many people come, and especially during the summer, and in the winter, of course, there's skiing not only here but near the Taos, and because we're at somewhere between 7,000 to 7,800 feet above sea level within the range of the city, and then the neighboring mountains that go up in 8,000, so that where people ski. And one thing that I personally find very unique is how much cleaner the air is. Maybe I shouldn't say that too much. A lot of people will start moving in here. Pollution will start creeping in, but really the air is a lot cleaner. I can feel that when I get off the plane, actually. You come from Denver, you come from San Francisco, or some of the other cities, or Chicago. These are the places that connect to our area, and you get off the plane and you can really feel that it is the cleaner air. So that's always nice.
So I'll scare them away after you attracted them, because we were talking before the interview. I had no idea that it gets that cold there in the winter. That was really surprising to me.
One year we had 3 feet of snow overnight. It was I think the last day of the year, 2006 or 2005, somewhere around that time. We had 3 feet of snow. And my car was stuck in the garage for about a whole month.
Wow.
Get it out.
Well, that is fantastic. So we can urge everybody to visit Santa Fe. Maybe you don't want them to live there because you don't want all that extra pollution.
Everyone is
urge them to
everyone
visit.
Is welcome. Everyone is welcome. Anytime.
So for this 150th episode, we wanted to run a contest, so we let anybody submit questions, and we got some really great ones. So for our viewers, thanks to everybody who submitted questions. We really appreciate it. We have one winner who will receive a free year of ASCE membership. And I was telling you before the interview, Ed, this guy deserves it because he watches everything we do on YouTube. He submits questions when we do every single live stream. So I was thrilled that his question got chosen. And this one comes from Iain Gidley from Thurber Engineering. And the question is, you've developed some widely used in situ-based liquefaction triggering procedures, and what application of those procedures most surprised you?
That's a fascinating question, actually, and I'm going to try to answer it as best as I can by going a little bit over the history. It was instigated by what happened in Niigata. The late Professor Seed, who was my advisor, and he was the chair of my thesis committee, had gone to Japan and brought back the information that there was this huge amount of liquefaction in Niigata, and he brought the blow count data, the subsurface information, boring data, lab data, and all kinds of information like that. And he said, well, I had been working on developing ground response procedures, how to analyze a site and obtain the stresses, the accelerations, the strains, whatever. And Ken Lee had developed had designed a cyclic triaxial testing machine, so you can test under cyclic loading and see when does liquefaction occur, and so on and so forth. Said, well, so Professor C is sort of the maestro, the orchestra leader. He said, well, let's get these two parts to get put together. So let's start working on that. And the question included what was so surprising is what was surprising to at that point to me was that the results were so consistent with what the observations were. And we had no idea how to do how to what kind of properties to put in the site response analysis. At that time, we're just doing purely linear elastic analyses. And that's all we knew how to do at that time. And that's all the computers could accommodate to. And but then we put together the information from the field in the lab and the analysis results, and where we thought things where things had liquefied and was damaged, we found that it looked like there would be the results are showing that should happen. And where there wasn't, the results showed that it should not happen. So it's surprising how consistent it was. Then later on, of course, we refined the methodology, and I developed the equivalent linear procedure, which is still in use, by the way. And we repeated all the analyses. Unfortunately, nothing. The consistency did not change. The numbers changed, but the consistency did not change. And one interesting thing along those lines is, when you run the analysis, you put an earthquake that varies like this, whereas the lab, especially the ones that, well, we still do. In those days, they were sort of like this. That's how the applied load was made the way Kennedy could do it at that time. MTS Corporation hadn't yet started developing the ones that allowed us to do it more sinusoidally. Anyway, so you had to take that and compare it to that. So we had to find a factor to connect the two. And I remember during the process, Harry Seed and I, the late Professor Harry Seed, and I were talking, said, well, how are we going to convert that? I said, how about if we multiply it by a factor of 2/3? He looked at me and said, yeah, but people will start being too precise, 0.66667 and things like that. Why don't we just change it to 0.65? And that's why a lot of people see that 0.65 at the beginning of our equation for the simplified procedure. That's how that number got started. Of course, it doesn't matter what number you select, because everything has to be consistent. So what you vary in here, you vary in here. So if you would use 0.7, it'd still be the same, but the values will change, but the consistency would not. So anyway, that was the process there. And then nothing really, you develop things and people say, oh, interesting. Sometimes people use them, sometimes they don't. But we were fortunate that in the late 60s, somebody is trying to reach me, and I don't know who it is. And in the 60s, the nuclear industry began to sort of get alive and building some nuclear plants. And for some reason, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, where the staff were very good people working there, they said, well, we really need to worry about this liquefaction issue. And they started insisting that the procedures that Professor Seed and I had developed should be used for these nuclear plants. And one day, Professor Seed got on a consulting assignment to work on a project in Boston, of all places, where a fill was being placed. They were worrying about liquefaction in the fill, how dense you should make it, and so on and so forth. And so he had me working on analyzing making a lot of site response calculations. And I was doing that every day, 2 or 3, and you put them in you go to the computer center, you put them at 8 o'clock at night, you come back at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock the following day. And maybe you made a typing error and you had to repeat everything, maybe not. So finally, I was getting a little frustrated that we couldn't do. And suddenly it occurred to me that, Newton's second law is a very useful law. F equals to ma, and F is the force, and you divide force by area, you get stress. And maybe that's the way we should compute the stresses. That's the whole idea of the simplified liquefaction procedure came about because of that project, and because of the fact that computers were not. If we had today's computers, I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, you can run 1,000 runs overnight, almost, so to speak. Anyway, so that's how that evolved, and so these are not. surprising in some ways, but not so surprising in others. Plus, what's really satisfying is to see how stable the results have been over the last 60 some odd years almost. Since I'm started in 67, so about 55, 56 years. Well, that's a long time. Things have been quite consistent. And that equation that we put together in the late 60s, actually that one part of it, which is the calculating demand part, is being used by many other things, like people who want to use the strain component have to calculate the stress to be able to calculate the strain, so they use that equation. People who use some of the recent development in the energy procedures, they need to get the hysteresis loop so they can calculate the amount of energy dissipated per cycle. To do that, they need to calculate the strains. You need that, they can need the stress. So they use that equation. So those are surprising in a satisfying way, not surprising in an unsatisfying way. So that's an answer. I appreciate that question, and I'd like to hopefully that individual will be at the conference in Vancouver next February, and we'll get a chance to shake his hand and thank you for asking the question.
I'm pretty sure he will be. We'll make sure Ian's going to go. But that, I want to say, that was a really good run through. And I think one of the things that's hard for people to remember, I mean, even my age, in the course of my lifetime, computing resources have obviously exploded. It's very challenging to remember sometimes that even a short time ago, we weren't able to do, even not basic modeling, but the amount of data that these machines could handle even 25 years ago was minute compared to what we can do now. So that was fantastic. What a great walkthrough of that whole development. That was really interesting.
I started working on probabilistic seismic hazard evaluations in the early 70s. And of course, we couldn't do a lot of things in those days. You got to put it in the big computer, and it takes at least 24 hours for on and on and on. Finally, the Hewlett-Packard came out with these hand calculators with a printer, which was programmable. And what I did in 1979-80 was to actually program that machine to run one source, one run at a time, to compute the probabilistic seismic hazard evaluation, make the seismic hazard evaluation using that. And I would be doing that in my office in San Francisco, for example, back in the late 70s. And the printer makes a Z sound, and people will be hearing that, because I always came to the office really early in the morning so that I don't create that noise with so many people around. So you can see the difference. Now, of course, you sit on your computer and you.
That's really good. I like that.
And I'm sure in the next 20 years, things are going to be even wider. They're going to explode, this artificial intelligence.
It's hard to imagine, and we don't even know yet what the advances are going to be.
The first computer I bought with a hard disk that had a capacity of 1 gigabyte was in 1992, I think. It was a Hewlett-Packard computer. It was a desktop. It was not, the laptops were not that popular, not that prevalent yet. And it cost me $9,000 for that computer in 1992 because it had 1 gigabyte hard disk. 1 gigabyte.
It is ridiculous. And I mean, I was working with my son last night on something, and his external drive that plugs into his laptop is 2 terabytes. And he was asking me what he's going to do when he fills that up.
2 terabytes.
That's amazing.
There it is.
That's fantastic.
That's my backup. My backups for.
To close everything out, we've got we do a lot of nostalgia on Director's Cut. That's one of the big things that we specialize in here. So these are 2 questions to make you look back some more. And the first one is in the course of your career, which collaborator was the most fun to work with?
Oh my gosh. uh, uh, as I mentioned before, I've had a variety of steps or not careers really, it's the same career, but segments, I guess. Private practice, university, private practice, university, and so on and so forth. And I've worked with so many fabulous people over the years. I don't think I've ever worked with anyone, maybe once or twice, I said, what the heck am I doing here? And in terms of fun, actually, what I find that I like to do what you were doing right now. If you need to laugh, laugh. Don't hold it back. And I remember we started a board, an advisory board, technical advisory board in Canada in 1995, and Lloyd Clough and a couple other people were members of that board. Sometimes you get a senior moment, you forget the names, especially when it's about 30 years ago. Anyway, we were sitting in their office in Vancouver. Actually, it was a project for a dam in Vancouver, and we were discussing the project and all kinds of issues and what have you, working on getting our report to the client, and we were laughing our hearts out because we were really enjoying ourselves. And one of our clients came up around and said, "You guys are laughing too much. It's just serious stuff." But then when we presented our report, they really liked it so much. They said, "Oh, well, you can laugh anytime you want." And basically, that's always been the case. I remember when we were working at Woodward Clyde in Oakland, we'd be working until 11 o'clock at night because the business had grown so much and we were so busy and we had to work late at night. And we'd be laughing even at 11 o'clock at night. So everyone I've worked with has always been fun, but you just mentioned just a few names, of course. Harry Seed I worked with him for about, from 1964 until 89 when he passed away. So that's a long time. Ross Boulanger the last 30 plus years, so that's a lot of fun. Lloyd Clough was my partner and co-principal, like a senior partner at Woodward Clyde. We worked together for 40 years almost altogether. So, and so many others. I mean, if I start mentioning names, I'm sure I'll forget some others, and I'm just going to stick to only these three. So I won't offend. Oh, and Jim Mitchell, my God, what a delight to work with that guy. He's unbelievable. I mean, it's just anytime he opens his mouth, I throw a sponge and I absorb what he's saying.
That's pretty good. That's an all-star list. So
and Mike Duncan, oh my gosh! I mean, and Bill Moore too. For some reason, I worked at James Moore in 1962 to 64 in San Francisco office part-time while I was doing my graduate studies at Berkeley. And for some reason, I was very fortunate that he took me under his wing, so to speak, and he had me working on his projects. And I learned so much from him. And he was always fun. He didn't laugh as much as some others, but he was always very pleasant, very helpful. And he gave me one advice that I never forgot, which is, whatever you do, do your best. And I think that is a very good, fantastic advice that I always tell anyone I get a chance to tell. And then the other advice I got that was so important was a few years later, I worked with Jim Sherrard. Some people may have heard his name. He worked a lot on dispersive soils and on filter criteria. He was a very prominent geotechnical engineer. And he wrote one of the earliest books on dams, actually, earth dams. Anyway, he worked with him back in 67, 68. And the advice he gave me was unbelievable. He said, when young people tend to really love analyses. And as you get older, you think more and more in terms of more experience, more judgment, and less analysis. But the key point that he made at that point, he said, you really got to watch out that you don't do an analysis just because you can. You got to do it because you should. And I thought that was a fabulous advice, which I think everybody needs to heed. So to answer your question, it's been fun. I've been at it since 1958. What's that? About 65 years?
65.
More or less. And so I'm giving my age away here.
That's okay. And you know what? Both of those pieces of advice that you mentioned there at the end, so unbelievably simple, but incredibly wise. And, you know, I think the best advice is usually pretty simple, but we overlook it a lot of the time. We're looking for these super complex solutions to these problems, and sometimes it's right there in front of you. I think have fun, don't overdo it, and you're probably going to be okay.
Enjoy what you're doing and do the best. Always do the best. And what's amazing is Harry Seed ultimately gave me the same advice about 5 years later. I got that one from Bill Moore about 62, 63, somewhere in that. And Harry Seed later that decade.
So we have to finish up with this one. It's another nostalgia question. We're asking you to look back. What development, and you can pick literally anything, during your career in civil or geotechnical engineering was the most unexpected to you?
Well, you know, that's actually a very tough question to answer. It's not that easy to answer, but trying to think about how to put it together. You know, you go to graduate school, you develop a procedure, you improve on a procedure, you augment a procedure, you whatever you do, and you hope people would use it. Yeah. And when we did this ground response analyses, developed the equivalent linear solution so that it makes it more meaningful, more physically correct in terms of applying it to soil properties more correctly than just a regular linear analysis type thing. And of course, now we are fully nonlinear, and things have improved tremendously because we do have the capability to do the analyses, and plus the better understanding of how soils behave. But you do all of these things, and nothing really, people try to use them. There's some usage here, some usage there. For liquefaction, for example, the nuclear industry dictated that they be used, otherwise they would not have been used. And then, but then suddenly the San Fernando earthquake occurred. And people who all their life said, well, embankment dams never fail during an earthquake. They always perform well. And you give them an example of like Sheffield Dam. Well, that was a minor dam, nothing to worry about. But then San Fernando occurred, and boy, the eyes opened. And how fast the profession changed its attitude. And let's analyze every vulnerable dam we can think of, starting with the hydraulic fill dams. And that's why the applications exploded. So that was a surprising thing to see how that happened. And then, let's see, from 1970 to 1990, it's 20 years later, Loma Prieta occurred. And suddenly our eyes opened about how important it is to worry about the presence of soft soils. You know, the cypress structure, the main failure occurred over the part that was built over the soft soil. So you have to pay attention to that. So a lot of these things, added the importance to doing all the things that I happened to be on the ground floor back in the early 60s, and no one had done much in that arena. And suddenly all of these things are becoming far more important and far more applicable. That's why you see so many increases in the number of people involved in geotechnical earthquake engineering. And that's been a surprise and a very satisfying thing to happen. And it's been a lot of fun being part of it. And there's so much talent has come into the arena. It's just unbelievable. My gosh, if I had half of their talent, I would be done a lot more.
I think most people would say that you probably did okay, though, over the years, Ed.
Well, I got the white hair for it.
But that was a fantastic answer, a fantastic set of answers. You made it through all 10 questions. You did a great job today, and we, of course, really appreciate that. Iain got a great answer, I think, to his award-winning question. He should be really happy about that. For all of our viewers, if you liked what you saw, and you probably did because you're here at the end, again, click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will always, every time, let you know when we post something new to the YouTube channel. So that was it for our 150th episode. Thank you, Ed, for doing this.
It's my pleasure, and I really want to emphasize what a great job you're doing, keeping this thing alive.
I might have to edit that out, you know.
And I love the enthusiasm, and I also love, and I've watched quite a few, not all 149. I've watched maybe 30 or thereabouts, maybe 40. I don't know, but certainly a lot more than just a handful. And they all been really wonderful. I won't mention too many names, because any names actually. That way the ones I didn't watch will not be happy with me.
That's all right.
But I love the enthusiasm, and I love the focus you give to these. I think that's great. And I wish you and everyone else a happy Thanksgiving, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. We'll see you all next year.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ed. And to our viewers, of course, this was episode number 150.
One question I wanted to ask, and I hope we don't edit this one out, is why do I use the nickname Ed? It's not my name. My name is Izzat, Izzat.
You got to tell everybody now. This is bonus content on Director's Cut. Go for it.
Yeah. Well, when I first came to the United States in 1958, I was not born in the United States. I was born in Syria, and I came in 1958 as a student, as freshman at the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And at that time, the Syria, where the hell is that? What is that? Where is that? Izzat, what is that? And they wanted to shorten it because everybody has to have a nickname. You can't, Robert cannot be Robert. It's got to be Bob, and Richard, Dick, and so on and so forth. So they gave me a nickname I did not particularly care for. So I said, just call me by my last name, Idriss. And that somehow, it had to be shortened. 5 letters is too long. And so it became Ed.
Wow.
And but I officially always use my full name. And incidentally, Izzat is an English word. It's the last word under I if you go to the full dictionary. It originally comes from Urdu and Arabic, but it is an English word. It's in the dictionary.
Oh, that's amazing. What a great bonus question there to end our episode of Director's Cut this week. So for all our viewers, again, you got extra content on episode 150. We're going to keep going. Hopefully we have 150 more. And again, for all of our viewers, we will see you with another brand new episode of Director's Cut next week.
Right here.